Have you seen this studio? Oh, it's so good. They're literally exposing Hollywood like never before. But are they?
I'm gonna make $1.3 billion, but I'm also gonna make a great film, all right?
Matt Remick thinks he can change the industry. He believes he can push for creativity, fight against the formula, and carve out space for real storytelling. But he's only to realize that Hollywood is not built to change. It's a system that has survived for almost a century now and is not bending for anyone. But here's the thing. It's not a direct satire on the industry. Welcome to Hami's Flat. Today we're breaking down what studio is and what it is not.
Prestige films and box office hits, those are not mutually exclusive. We can do both.
I've seen this misconception circulating in discussions, but contrary to popular belief, I don't think this studio in any shape or form a critical, satirical, rebellious piece of art against the industry. I mean, they're definitely not going for the same angle that BoJack Horseman did, and not the same satirical direction that this production team went with The Boys. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this studio isn't good enough. I love the show, I think it's great. But at the same time, I can't help but to realize that many people think of it as a rebellious art against Hollywood because it lacks the confrontational tone and leans more towards something like, oh, Hollywood is so obsessed with sequels, they want to franchise everything and on and on. It doesn't offer a new perspective, just repeats what it's been said for years without actually challenge the system. Not that it fails to take it down, it simply doesn't want to. That's what, for me at least, makes it more enjoyable. I don't feel like I'm being preached to, especially not by Seth Rogen, who could actually patronize me about how Hollywood works, but instead I think most of us film lovers see a part of ourselves in Matt Remick's struggle to balance between art and commerce.
Well, guess what? That never happens, and you're gonna screw everything up trying to make it happen.
It is the exact question that they ask over and over again. Why don't studios get creative? Why is no one thinking about art in the industry? Then this show comes with a fresh take on studio heads, and it challenges the stereotype of Hollywood execs being some money-grabbing opportunists that only care about maximizing their profits. That's not entirely true, but at the same time, the system has worked so well for a long time, so why would it suddenly shift toward this so-called artsy-fartsy filmmaking?
Bullshit?
They're never gonna do that, and maybe that's what makes Apple TV stand out, or that is why even A24 exists, to prove that a film can be both artsy and entertaining and at the same time do well in the market. But even so, that's not always the case, since there are lots of their production that didn't do well, and that's the risk, that's the struggle that this show delves into.
I still do.
Matt Remick is someone we relate to, someone we want to see succeed in this lost cause, only to face the fact that almost every episode ends in a tragedy. He is a false protagonist. Not only he's incapable of changing the world, but unable to change even his own reputation. He sees himself as Hollywood's main character. Yet with each episode, he realizes more and more that he's just another film exec. That's the tragedy of Matt Remick. Many people confront him about the path he's taking, warning him of the failure ahead, but his relentless optimism pushes him forward, forcing him to feel every failure with his flesh and bones. It's even more sad that the show starts with one of, if not the most devastating choices he has to make as head of the studio. Not only he has to let down Martin Scorsese, but he also has to actively make himself the villain. Scorsese, in that final encounter, acknowledges how studios operate and that they can't work professionally. But when Matt Remick tells him that he bought the screenplay just to kill the movie, it turns the villainous act into something very personal. It's brilliant to establish that in the first episode, because immediately tells the audience that Matt Remick's struggle is a lost cause. He cannot change the system from inside. The harder he tries, the more he's forced himself to become the villain.
Yeah, I tell you, Matt, honestly, it's not surprising, because you're just another run-of-the-mill, faceless, talentless, spineless suit.
I have a face.
That's what separates Matt Remick from becoming a purely comic character like Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm. Some similarities arise when you compare how these two great comedians play different but almost identical versions of themselves, both often serving as the butt of the joke and ridiculing themselves to achieve comedy. Both are in constant conflict with people around them, driven by their own foolish idealism that ultimately gets them nowhere. But despite these similarities, Larry David's character is far more rooted in comedy. He's too stubborn, too arrogant, and doesn't actually change throughout the show. Matt Remick, on the other hand, is on a path that constantly reminds him that he's just another cog in the machine.
Well, I believed in you from the very start, and at the end of the day, you're the artist, I'm just the bean counter.
Have a good night.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
His acknowledgement of this fact in Golden Globes episode gives him a depth that separates him from being merely a comic character. I love it. I love everything about it. Whatever this is, a fusion of deep characters in situational comedy with technical perfectionism, it just works so well. But even so, it's not a commentary on Hollywood's policies. It does acknowledge that the industry pushed creatives toward tested formulas, but at the same time, unbounded creativity can work against the art itself. Rather than blaming one side or painting studios as the sworn enemies of artistic values, the show highlights the tension between the two, showing that despite their conflicts, they must coexist.
We love new ideas.
Just not too new, because we got a pretty tight formula that we got to hit.
I wouldn't say it's a formula so much as a structure that we 100% know works, so we're going to do it over and over again.
Many people assume that the studio is the ultimate satire parody beast, but that title belongs to The Boys, which takes a relentless approach to mocking everything wrong with repetitive formulas that kill artistic vision and even hurting sales. Honestly, I'm glad Rogen and Goldberg didn't take studio in that direction. If they had, it would have felt like a rehash of their previous work and might have leaned too much into the idea of rebelling against the system as a popular trope, giving audiences the illusion that defying the industry is some ground act of resistance.
Just because that worked one fucking time doesn't mean it's gonna work again.
All right, there are 11 Fast and the Furious movies that prove your little theory fucking stupid, man.
Even Hollywood itself has realized that mocking the industry is a winning tactic with movie lovers. Several great films and TV shows have embraced the idea. The studio fits in that trend, but it takes a different approach. Rather than outright rebellion, it highlights that the system is absurd and yet necessary. But I do believe people like Matt Remick, flawed, stubborn, and always fighting for creativity, are the ones who will keep cinema alive.
I'm sort of single-handedly keeping film alive.
Sure, his love for the craft can sometimes work against it, but in the end, this constant conflict between studios and creatives is what shapes the industry. It's what keeps storytelling evolving. I don't usually get sentimental about art, but I have to believe that people like Matt will carve out space for creative storytelling, and the studio has the potential for many more seasons, as long as it stays true to their characters and their gradual growth within the comedic tone. But one thing we already know is that Seth Rogen is trying to convince Daniel Day-Lewis to guest star in season 2, so clearly they have more brilliant ideas coming. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more content. We've got plenty more deep dives coming your way. See you in next one.